what is the hardest part you found of being a carer, but what is also the best part or the most rewarding part for you?
The most rewarding part for me was that at the end of it, and given what was going on at the time, I managed to look after Mum single-handed to within 10 hours of when she passed away. It was only those last 10 hours that she was in hospital, and I was able to be with her right to the end, holding her hand, which is almost miraculous given what was going on at the time. And I'm just so grateful for that, because the thought of her passing away on her own without me there, not understanding why I wasn't there, is everything to me. I just don't think I could have coped, and I feel so much for all the thousands and thousands of people that hasn't been the case for. So for my mum and myself, I'm incredibly grateful for that. That's the most rewarding thing. The hardest thing was trying to deal with the famous continuing healthcare, which, as those of you who know me know, is one of my big bugbears. It's nothing short of a national scandal what's going on. And if there's one thing that I could have done with knowing more about as Mum started to deteriorate, it's that. And there's just not enough information and not enough knowledge in the carer support services to help you with that and to prepare you for it. And you do need to be very, very well prepared for it if you want to be successful. So that would have been the one thing, that was the hardest, most difficult thing, and the one thing that I would have, if I could see my time again, I'd like to have known more about. I know it now, but it's too late now.
I think that's a really good point as well, because I personally didn't have to deal with that, but obviously through the Carers Trust, I went on one of the Zoom sessions that they provided to us about continuing healthcare and all the pitfalls. And I remember thinking, as I was listening to the advice, how do people navigate that? One, the paperwork and the expectations and the time involved, and also you're still being a carer, so the last thing you need really is to be completely embroiled in like a process that is very easy to get wrong. I remember us saying things like there's certain things that it's all about criteria and points, and if you don't get it exactly right or you don't understand it yourself, it's just a minefield. And I do agree that that must have been a terrible thing to have to navigate. We never got to that position, luckily, but I know even though I'm okay with forms and things, I remember looking at some of the paperwork that they sent us to share. I just thought, wow, my mind's blown on that. And I think support with that is extremely lacking, and it's just not there, is it? And it's something that should be there, and it should be given to carers really early on to say at the point of, this is who you can ask for advice, this is what you can do, and without having to sort of find it all out for yourself. I think that is a really good point, Martin.
Most people don't encounter it until the moment of crisis, and it's too late then. You need to know about it well before you're in crisis, because you're not in a fit state mentally or physically at the point of crisis to deal with it. It's so complicated and so difficult, and there's so much malpractice going on in it, to be quite honest, and I can back that statement up with evidence. There is malpractice, considerable malpractice going on with it, and my mum went through it. It was a nightmare. It took me months to prepare for it. And they turned her down, and she died without ever receiving any care at all, even end-of-life care, because of that.
I think my membership of Carers Trust gave me a forewarning of the continuing healthcare. But when it happened, like you say, it was an abrupt event. My mum was in hospital. She was not going to survive, but they were going to let her out. And it appeared to me that they were spending an inordinate amount of effort and time to make sure that I wasn't going to get it rather than I was going to get it. They were definitely very careful about the wording they used. And I think they also regretted the fact they used the wording which I could grab onto, that she will need continuing medical attention when she leaves hospital. And they probably wish they'd never said that.
Yeah.
But going back to your original question, hard parts and easy parts, I think for me, one of the hardest parts was watching your loved one deteriorate and having no power at all to do anything about it or stop it or assist in any way. You're just helpless, but you're there. And in addition to that, when they do finally pass, which is going to be the case in the majority of cases, whether it's sooner or later, when they do finally pass, there is a realization that you've lost a lot of time in your own life by doing that. I mean, it's willingly given, and it's unselfishly, you unselfishly devote yourself to you're cared for. So suddenly you realise that there's a lot of time or years gone by which you spent with your loved one. But the flip side of that is that you get the opportunity to spend loads of quality time with your loved one, your mum or your dad or whoever it may be. That quality time you probably would not have been able to spend with them had it been a normal life, because you've been off doing your holidays and you're travelling and you're working and everything else. So there's both sides to that.
Yeah.
For me, the best part, and I think this is kind of something that's very similar to Martin's, in that just knowing that I was taking care of my mum the very best I could, and knowing that in my own conscience and heart, it's love, isn't it? And it's about, I know that if it was the other way around, she'd have been by my bed the whole time. And it's just, you want to just wrap them up in your comfort and love. And I think that's probably the for me, and I was like Martin, we were extremely blessed that we got to keep mum at home, and she was only in bed for 4 days before she sadly passed, but we were all with her. And in the circumstances, like you say, it could have been a lot worse. She could have been taken away and not seen her and been alone. And as you say, the thought of that's what you are so focused on being, and making sure they're not alone, whether it's you or your family members with them. And I think for me, the best part is knowing I did my best. I know I did my absolute best for them. And I know that, I couldn't have done anything better. And that keeps me going. I think the worst part, I don't know. I think there's just a lot of things that you I think it was hard for my mum to accept that I gave up my job to care for her. She was very much of the mindset that she didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want to be, lying in a bed somewhere and not have a life, because we've seen it in friends and family. And I think getting her and me to be on the same page, and at the end of the day, I just said, we're a team, we're going to fight this together. And she did have treatment, and some of it was successful, but it was hard sometimes knowing how much pain she was in, and just dealing with it.
In the situation I had, and I recognise that, a situation I had which made me realise the value I'd been to my mum, was she went into hospital towards the end of her life and came out for a very short time at the end of it. But while she was in hospital, she managed, and bear in mind, she was getting dementia. She was quite out of it at times. And it was one of these end-of-life dementias where it's a rapid decline. I had a phone call from her, and she said, I want to come home and I want to be with you. And that absolutely ripped me apart, because I realised that what I'd been doing all those years without being told, really, no, I was told a number of times, but without it being an hourly comment, you're doing a great job, keep it up, son. I suddenly realised that she actually wanted to be there. She appreciated me as a carer, and and that really hit me and made me feel quite emotional on the day.